Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. This one says, the key to life is the vehicle, which is the family in its basic function of the life-light zone. The family within all fields of evolution can participate in the house of many mansions. What does any of that mean? But first, let's say hello to some people. Auntie is in here first. She says hi with the peace sign. Hi, my favorite auntie. Leon is here. He says, hey, Maggie. People watching from the clouds, hello to you as well. Feel free to say hello. All right, so we are talking about the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. We are on key 1-1-5, pages 139 to 146. This is a very esoteric work, so we use Disney's TVA as well as some other things, other concepts for making her talks very esoteric work, not esoteric, as critiquing his premise. The more I get into it, the more I'm going to be critiquing and giving some guidance, maybe. Hi, Captain Obvious. You're in here in the chat. I wanted to be obvious. Adrian says, let's go. Adric is not here today, but let's hear it for the Dancing Maggies. Because he is part of the best live tribe on YouTube. Okay, so let me preface this with, I have had a cough, a terrible cough, a nasty cough. So I have cough drops here. So if I start coughing, I am going to mute. I'm going to get a cough drop. And I'm sorry if you hear the cough drop in my mouth. I will apologize ahead of time and just keep it moving. Okay, so this key focuses on the plan. Like, what is the purpose of all of this anyway? Okay. Now, the full text reading is available on my channel. So if you haven't listened to it, you want to listen to it, you absolutely can. The first few episodes, I read the whole thing during the episode on that Wednesday. Then I moved to splitting it into, there's a text reading that comes out a couple days ahead of time. And then we do the breakdown, although I do read some highlights when we do this. Leon says Maggie is diving into her Friedrich Nietzsche bag. Yeah, dang right. Okay, so I want to read some of the highlights because there was a couple of red flags. At least one red flag. And that made me think, I think we got to look at this. Also made me think maybe this is why different governments are buying or wanting to buy different countries and like doing things in certain lands because of the, think about what he's been saying, these ley lines and these energy grids. And if this, if there is some of these people who are trying to force the apocalypse or whatever, you guys have heard of those people, maybe it's these guys. So maybe we kind of need to figure out what they're talking about. Maybe they're a lot more like the TVA than we thought. Okay, so the highlights. Behold, you are the Father's sheep, and you are numbered among those whom the Father hath given each son of God, each mansion of light. Key 15 speaks of the larger family of creation, which is already in the house of many mansions. So that was flag number 1, more of a yellow, orange, whatever. But you are sheep, and you have been given to each son of God. This is some ownership there. You know what I mean? Like, you're a sheep and you got given to somebody who's more important than you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Leon. Okay, so then He says the human family can only participate in the 7 finite mansion worlds of light until it is willing to use its family focus of love and light as a basic stepping stone of crystal within the life light zone. So that's his explanation of the key. He showed me all the basic stages to emphasize that this was the central unit that God the Father has chosen. And when earth universes violate the model of the Father, the Mother, the Son, the Daughter, the balances of the 10 Commandments, they cannot sit down at the table of light, but must devour themselves. Okay. He pointed out to me many scriptures, one being the sacred scriptures of the Church of Moroni or Mormon. Okay, red flag. Red flag, red flag. He explained that the true scriptures of the Church of Moroni contain the keys for preparing the family structure to serve the office of light and to enter the celestial family of God. He also explained that the Church of the Latter-day Saints was the living tribe of Joseph, and that just as Joseph had gathered his brothers in Egypt, the tribe of Joseph will gather. Let's look at something here. The Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon describes acts of violence, including decapitations and mass destruction of cities. These are presented as biblical narratives, not surprising because Yahweh killed 2 million people, by the way, in the Bible. So, makes sense. And are interpreted differently by different groups. Additionally, the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been marked by controversies and violent events, such as the Mountain Meadow Massacre, where a group of immigrants were killed by a Mormon militia. The Book of Mormon describes several decapitations and dismemberments. Jesus Christ is said to have destroyed multiple cities due to their wickedness, including burning them with fire, sinking them into the sea, or covering them with the earth. Doesn't sound like the same Jesus I heard of. These descriptions are part of the narrative and are interpreted differently by various groups. I mean, because decapitation can be taken multiple ways. Sorry, I'm being sarcastic. Here we have controversies and violence, Mountain Meadow Massacre, polygamy. It's a controversy. That's not violence. The church's history includes other controversies related to racial teachings. You think? Anybody ever looked at what the Mormons teach about Black people and the treatment of Native Americans? Yeah. So wait, what did he say? He pointed out to me many scriptures, one being the sacred scriptures of the Church of Mormon. He explained that the true scriptures of the Church of Mormon contain the keys for preparing the family structure to serve the office of light and to enter the celestial family of God. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag. Oh, God. Adrian says, I'm out. Right? Now I think this may be discussing the TVA a lot more than we thought. And it's interesting because he talks about the Great White Brotherhood. And I looked it up and was like, did he ever, say, is this white people? Did he ever address how racist that sounds? And, apparently he put out some statement that it's every race, right? But as we saw in the last key before last, his pictures of all of the races coming together is a bunch of white people. So I'm like, And now you're talking about the Book of Mormon is like the true family structure, polygamy, which, whatever people do, that's not violence. But you're saying the family structure is supposed to be polygamy, violence, racism, decapitation. What? Adrian Hicks says, burning them with fire, drowning them with water, covering them with earth. Where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah, Black towns post-slavery. So true. So true. And in the Book of Mormon, they're saying Jesus did that. The guy who said, "Don't be violent." Weird. Weird. I apologize to anybody who is Mormon listening, but you guys know what's in your book. You already know what's in your book, okay? So, again, this is why I'm using the TVA as a metaphor now, because I think it is the TVA. If this is what modern Yahwehians are trying to do, is it something that can be stopped? Is this a part of their plan to push the apocalypse? This whole, put people on Israel and it'll make Jesus come back. Is this it? Is this what they're doing? I don't know. This is making me think a lot. So he goes on. Enoch told me that the children who would be born of highly spiritual parents would not come into the world under the influences of the old zodiac, Mazzaroth cycle, but would be born with karmic release, knowing that they have direct communication with the Father's kingdom. Now, I had this red flag, and then he talks about children a lot, and I already had the red flag, so it was a little weird about it. Was essentially like children don't have to listen to their parents because they can talk to God directly. It's a little weird. But if these children are not born under the zodiac, that means everybody else was born under the zodiac, right? Which I've explained before, that I look at the zodiac more scientifically. It's because planets put out electromagnetic waves, energy waves. That's been measured. It's a thing. It's science. It's not woo-woo stuff. I think when a person is born, when they're no longer protected by the waters, when they're born, that there are different energy patterns depending on where the planets are. There's a different energy coming from Earth because, Earth's a planet, so it puts out energy waves based on the time of year. So maybe that has some effect on people and their personality and things like that. So I want to show you guys something. I had talked about the Schumann resonance before. Let me stop screen and then share screen. And we're going to, this is what the Schumann was the guy who first measured the frequency that Earth is putting out, which you can see in the middle, in that white, these different wavelengths. But these other pictures are, trackers that you can get. So like this one off to the side that's got these big white shoots, that was these bigger energy waves coming out of the Earth, which, doesn't mean Earth is shooting people, but it does affect people. I mean, we are all standing on a vibrating rock. We just don't know it because we've always been on it. Kind of like when you've been on a boat for a long time and then you get off the boat and they call it sea legs, because you get used to it. So we're very used to living on a vibrating planet. We don't notice it too much, but when these big waves happen, it affects people. For instance, and all of that is scientific. Okay, here. Stop screen. I'm gonna do another one. There we go. There are scientific studies about the Schumann. Okay, so the Schumann resonance, the vibration that Earth puts out. This is from the National Institutes of Health. Yeah, I think so. Oh, National Center for Biotechnology Information. So there's academic studies that show, so does Schumann resonance affect our blood pressure? Big shocker. It absolutely does, because we're being hit with electromagnetic fields. And it even talked about the different types of magnetic field components, right, that we're hit with. And yeah, so it affects our bodies. We are in a big meat sack that's mostly water. So if you're being hit with energy pulses, it's absolutely gonna affect you. So that's the Schumann. But that's what it was making me think of when it was talking about the zodiac, is that we all were, but what do you mean not born under the zodiac? Like, the planets are still there. How are you not going to be born under the planets? I didn't necessarily get that one per se. So let's keep going. Leon says facts. Well, whatever I said, it's facts. Hey, Snowman, thanks for being here. So moving on. The outer physical reality is man, woman, and child upon this planet, but without the unification and sanctification of the seventh ray of light, the family of love would be disregarded by the predilections of the flesh. Huh? I didn't necessarily understand that. You have to have this sanctification of this ray of light, or be disregarded by the predilections of the flesh. I didn't necessarily get that one, but when they talk about, being susceptible to the predilections of the flesh, to me, this is a continuation of constantly being taught to hate and despise your humanness. Okay, so my question always is, why would an all-knowing, all-loving, omniscient, and all-powerful God be neutered against forces of darkness? How would the same God be neutered against fallen beings, like have no power over them to just fix this stuff? Why would this God create unclean, rebellious, imperfect humans? My answer, because it didn't. We are told, I'm going to get into that when we talk about I have a new series coming out called Under the Dominion. And then we'll go through bloodlines. We'll map them all out with all the proof. But we are told that we are slimy, dirty, dumb, sex-crazed peasants by religion, by the medical field, by psychology. But what if we're not? What if all our problems stem from this one belief of our filthiness and incompleteness that separates us from our inner wisdom? It creates insecurity in some people, that they're so insecure that they have to constantly take it out on some other people, or they're afraid to compete. And then we end up with things like spiritual supremacy, from the Abrahamic religions. We end up with racial supremacy where, certain white people, blue-blooded people, whatever, think that they're the master race on a planet that's got a sun, by the way. Based on all this insecurity and being separated by God, because we're constantly told how absolutely terrible we are and our predilections of the flesh. But again, why would this perfect God be neutered against the forces of darkness, or neutered against fallen beings? Meaning that he can't win against them. He can't make them go away. He can't do these things. Or why did he create these unclean, rebellious, imperfect, slimy, nasty, sex-crazed humans? Because he didn't. Yahweh did not. That's my answer. But I'll prove it when we talk about Under the Dominion. Okay, so let's keep it going. Oh, wait, there was comment. Adrian says, I understand it. It's just super esoteric. So, got to keep that to myself. But you understand it, and that's all I care about. So, therefore, we fulfill the book of Moses, chapter 6, verses 57 through 68. Wherefore, teach it unto your children, that all men everywhere must repent, or they can in no wise inherit the kingdom of God. For no unclean thing can dwell there or dwell in his presence, for in the language of Adam, the language of light, man of holiness is his name, and the name of his only begotten is the Son of Man, even Jesus Christ, a righteous judge, who shall come in the meridian of time. Therefore I give unto you a commandment to teach these things freely unto your children. Tell your children how nasty they are. Nasty, disgusting, terrible creatures. And you must say that you're sorry for being born. How terrible you were born. Why is it that we see babies and we see beauty and perfection and we adore them in adoration? But when it comes to religion, we're supposed to teach the kids nasty, right? That they're terrible. Shame. You should be ashamed being human. Leon said Rothschild has 10 Anglo-Saxon last names. LOL. Only one of them are a rabbit. All right. So we're now at a point where you're seeing the red flags. There were some orange ones and some yellow ones before, but now we're deep in the red flags. Okay. Which makes it difficult to glean what the truth is. This is a lot like every standardized religion that we know of. They tend, especially the Abrahamics, they go in, they take the truths, and some things they keep and attribute to their God. Some things they twist completely backwards. Some people they juxtapose. And so trying to get the truth out of the reading can make it a little difficult. But I think that's what we're on now, going through this book, is now we're going to try to pull the truths out and see what they're on. We're going to see what they're on about. But I want you to use your insight, right? Your intuition, because if you feel like something has been bastardized or skewed towards a falsehood, use your insight and your intuition and your discernment and your inner wisdom to untangle the truth from the lie. It can be difficult. We've all been indoctrinated. I shouldn't say all, but mostly the people that watch me are people from Western cultures. So England, India, and India, yeah, because they're in an area that's been colonized, and the United States, primarily the United States. So, now we're talking, the TVA's handbook, and this being a handbook. So her talk says that this divine plan is the real handbook. Kind of like the TVA's handbook is how time should work, right? But it doesn't take into account the wants and needs of individuals. Neither one of them do. Her talk says we co-create with the divine through our awakened choices, as long as the choice is what Yahweh wants. That's not a choice. So are there variants in her talk's book? Sure. We have the different evolutionary paths of the same soul. So he talks about that. We have infinite options to explore growth until one finally aligns with the divine blueprint. What we learn is that one timeline, only having one path or one blueprint, creates pain, division, and stagnation. This is what we learned through the TVA. And this is what, her talk is promoting, especially if the plan was never meant to include you, right? You have all the choices in the world as long as you choose Yahweh. And this sounds very much like if you are not in an Abrahamic religion, you're going to burn in hell. You can do whatever you want as long as you follow Yahweh. He's kind of what he's doing, But this reminds me of Bergson's Elan Vital, which is life's creative impulse cannot be mechanized. Meaning, the more you try to control a people, humans, the more creative they will become. The more controlled chaos will come out. The more art, song, beauty, this creative impulse, because it can't be mechanized. It can't be put on one blueprint, and this is the blueprint for everybody, and this is it. So we think about Loki's throne moment. His throne moment is not his acquiescence and submission to the timeline, which is what they were trying to get him to do the whole time. He didn't acquiesce to the timeline chosen by the powers that be. The powers that be decided what was the sacred timeline and what got pruned, right? It was also not Loki's hubris placing him on the throne of time. He wanted to rule. He wanted to be in charge. He kept trying to figure out when it was going to be his time and what he had to do and, those kind of things. It wasn't his hubris this time. It was about releasing the need for control. Just releasing it. And holding space for possibility. The Zen Buddhists call that living in the flow. Okay? You go with the flow, right? You control what you can control, you set up your life path. You don't allow yourself to go in ways that harm yourself or harm others. And then whatever happens, happens. But what Loki did with time was allowing space for all possibilities, not controlling everything, right? So life is about integration and balance. Integration and balance. Integrate the new information, integrate the new thing, integrate whatever's happening and balance it. Like you can think about it this way. Are you alligator Loki? Are you operating on instinct and like base physiological needs? Are you just one instinct to the next instinct? Are you President Loki, operating on ego, validation, and constantly proving yourself? Or are you like this God Loki, a servant to your destiny, not being a servant to other people's, not sacrificing yourself on other people's altars, not sacrificing yourself for somebody else's idea of what it means to be in relationship with the divine? Are you a servant of your destiny? Are you serving your destiny? Are you on the sacred timeline? Are you in the multiversal chaos? Where are you? And how do you want your destiny to unfold? Because only you can do something about that. The greatest growth comes from embracing chaos and finding balance within it all. The best way to do that is to be authentically you, tell the truth, be honest, be yourself all the time. So that's the end of that key. We're going to keep moving forward with these keys. Guess what next week's is called? That section? The Great White Brotherhood. So yeah, we're going to get into that one because there's a lot of red flags in that one. A lot. So we will get into that next week in the Great White Brotherhood. This Sunday, we will have Under the Dominion. And this is the story of Yahweh and the Abrahamic religions. So whether you fashion yourself in an Abrahamic religion or not, it's very important because a lot of the reason why the show is called Under the Dominion is because globally we are under the dominion of Abrahamic religions. And those Abrahamic religions are under the dominion of Yahweh. So really knowing the story of Yahweh is really important. So that is going to be a multi-part series. Then we'll move into the Bloodline series that will kind of pull together the Shasu stuff, the Goth stuff, the Khazars. But I'm also going to talk about, we talked about the Neanderthals and the Goths, but I'm going to talk about, you guys know how there's that theory of skin whitening over time. But then there's also this theory that Neanderthals were always white. I'm going to show you genetically that they are two different things. So we're going to go through that. There's a bloodline that is foundational Black Americans or American descendants of slavery that may be something you haven't heard of before, but we're going to look at the DNA and archaeological evidence So there's a lot of bloodlines coming up. There's Under the Dominion coming up. Hopefully you guys can participate. That was a lot of spoiler alerts, or not alerts, but a lot of spoilers, or hopefully getting interest. So you guys enjoy your Wednesday. I'm going to show you a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together. Bye.